Well, who says that you can't mix politics and Pilsners? So does it show that you were recording on your end?
I am. Yep.
Is this thing on?
We're live, baby.
Democrats destroy everything they touch.
We need to defend the police, not defund them.
MAGA, it's more than a man. It's a movement. In the 2020 election, free and fair, yes or no?
Absolutely not.
COVID has created a tyrannical government.
This is the only country in the world where those who hate it never leave.
Whether you like Pilsners, bourbons, or anything in between,
grab your favorite beverage and come have a drink with us.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Pilsners and Politics. Today, we have Cade Murphy, founder of Global Dawn USA, joining us. Cade, how are you today?
I'm doing well. How about you?
Hey, I'm doing really well. I appreciate you coming on the show to talk with me. I found you on Instagram. I thought your page was very compelling, and I thought it was important to bring you onto the show. I think a lot of your views I may not share, but the purpose of the show, especially my mission, my goal, is to expose my listeners to as much information as possible, right? So then they can develop their own opinion and move forward from there. So you're the founder of an organization called Global Dawn USA. Can you just tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so Global Dawn USA is we are a activist organization. That's sort of our goal. But we do have a very different goal to our activism than most organizations. Ultimately, we want to do whatever we can to reestablish moral order in the world. We feel that our world is in a current state of degeneration. Things aren't going well. Over the course of the last century and a half, we've seen a lot of forces trying to tear down traditional moral order and try to establish this sort of new degenerate moral order that's ultimately very bad for societies. One thing that I've noted, that this was also noted by a great figure of a recently established world religion, a man named Shoghi Effendi, that there are three forces that are causing degeneracy in the world right now. And those forces are nationalism, racialism, and communism. It seems to me that those are all three forces that need to be opposed. Global Dawn, ultimately, we are very opposed to communism, as any conservative might be. We reject the sort of idea of upending traditional moral order, trying to create absolute equality, trying to destroy religion, things of that sort. But also we oppose, sort of this racialism and nationalism too, which a lot of conservatives, at least in the West now, are not in favor of racism and stuff like that. They're against that, certainly. And people say they're not, or are morons. Certainly just not in the reality of the situation. And like them, we also oppose that. But unlike conservatives, we oppose nationalism. We're very much in favor of globalism, of uniting the world under a single banner, and of developing a moral philosophy that takes influence from the various world religions in order to create a global moral order that is sustainable, long-lasting, and ultimately results in humanity having a much better future. The way things are currently going, the way things are currently degenerating, I really don't see a future in which this is not necessary. So that's pretty much the goals of our organization, and that's sort of our views in a nutshell.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but what it sounds like to me is that Global Dawn wants to take on the role of a new religion, right? Because you're saying that you want to pick and choose from all the different world religions and help the people of the world live a more clean and moral life. Is that correct? Or please correct me if I'm wrong.
Not quite, no. We don't want to create a new world religion. I'm not a prophet. I don't claim to be a prophet. I have no dispensation from God whatsoever. Personally, I'm a deeply religious person. I would not feel that that'd be good of me to actually try a new world religion. I think that's foolishness. The goal of this rather is to look at the various world religions, look at what is universal. In some cases, there are some values that you could say are, perhaps you could say, transcendental, that even though they're not necessarily universal, you could accept them as part of the global moral order that would be, for the best of everyone, like monogamy, for example. There's really no reason why we shouldn't be accepting monogamy. It's ultimately a very advantageous virtue. But besides that, there are universal moral principles that are found in all the world religions that have some sort of origin in God. And I would include Buddhism in that, even though that it's more agnostic on the issue of God, but that's a whole other issue. Regardless though, my goal is to look at these various universal values, bring them together into a single philosophy that can bind them together in a manner. We do have the goal of, our goal is unity. That is our primary goal, you could say, besides also virtue, which I'd say is that's actually more important than unity. But unity is certainly our secondary goal, because we want to see the unity of the nations. We want to see the unity of the races, and we want to see the unity of the world religions. Now, when it comes to the extent of that unity of the world religions, personally, I'm not going to say we should make them all one single religion or not. I don't really know how that's going to look in the future, but I do feel that in that unity, there's something there that we actually need to pursue, because right now we see forces going against religion in the world, and those forces are trying to completely eradicate religion regardless of what religion it is. And if we just continue to embrace sectarianism and embrace infighting among ourselves, they're going to completely demolish us. So I figure that we do need to unite. We do need to develop a system of moral values that is universal. And in creating that system of universal values, we will be able to actually create a global culture that can, in fact, have everyone under a single banner.
So you talk a little bit about the evil within this world, right? The evil forces that are kind of pulling us away from religion, a good moral compass, for lack of a better term. What specifically do you think they are? Where is it coming from? How do we combat it? How do we get closer to God, or closer to this? How do we get closer to this? Moral purity, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. So basically, I guess that is a two-faceted question, but first, talking about what these forces of evil and degeneracy are. Some people on the right like to say that liberalism is the issue. Liberalism isn't really the issue, though. It's if anything, liberalism of all the forms of modernity that have come about is the most successful. It has been the most advantageous and ultimately the most just. The problem is that there are other forms of modernity, other philosophies, other ideologies that have come about that have tried to degenerate the traditional moral order and tried to twist this, the liberal moral order. These are, I guess you could call them anti-religions, is what I would call them. Most of the time, people would refer to these as totalitarian ideologies. Philosophies such as communism, National Socialism, fascism, Chinese communism, and now, of course, wokeism. Some people don't really want to call wokeism a totalitarian ideology, but in a certain sense, it is. At the very least, it's a totalitarian ideology in the sense that Chineseism is a totalitarian ideology. Some people have differentiated it between sort of soft totalitarianism and hard totalitarianism, with 20th century hard totalitarianism being the Gestapo and concentration camps and things of that sort, and soft totalitarianism being social credit systems and it's much more psychological and not necessarily using much physical force. That's sort of the idea of soft totalitarianism. I'm not sure if it'll even stop there in the case of wokeism. It may very well go further. I could be wrong, but I really don't know. It's too early on to really tell. But regardless, these are all forces of degeneration in the world. And contrary to what some people might have said in the past, fascism and National Socialism were anti-religious. They were anti-Christian ideologies. Like the Nazis themselves literally did put plans in place to eradicate Christianity in the aftermath of World War II. So anyone who says those aren't anti-religious ideologies are either lying or are ignorant. Like, so if we look at these various ideologies, they are trying to corrupt modern societies, trying to create these I call anti-religions, sort of just the antithesis of religion in itself, trying to basically bring everyone to worship the God of the state, essentially the state as a god, and trying to necessarily intentionally, but I guess to a certain extent intentionally, trying to invert the moral order of mankind, trying to invert our moral conscience, trying to destroy everything that is good in this world. And of course, many of them don't realize they're even doing that, but that is ultimately what these ideologies are doing. Karl Marx himself, though, like a lot of people don't know this, but he himself was a man who didn't really have a good moral values. Like his own family did call him a demon or demonic. Like his own Frederick Engels himself called him a monster of 10,000 devils. Like along with an entire list of various horrible things that he did during his life that is beyond the scope of this conversation. But I can assure you, like your listeners should go look into that, because the things that he did as an individual human being were absolutely horrific. Like he truly was demonic. But like and I do have my doubts that he had any good intentions in creating communism. Anyway, though, so that's ultimately what I think this force of degeneracy is in the world. Like I wouldn't attribute that to liberalism. I would attribute it to these various totalitarian ideologies, these anti-religions that are trying to invade our societies and trying to corrupt the moral order. Now, getting to like the topic of what we can do in order to fix that and fix moral order. Like so of course there is what we have to do at the individual level. Like each and every one of us has to learn to follow God, has to be devout, has to be like, personally, I don't really care what religion it is, so long as it is a God-given religion or a transcendent religion of some kind. Like I think that one needs to follow that and to the best of their ability, try to follow God, try to not give in to these various forces that are trying to degenerate the world. Like not give in to these forces of nationalism, racialism, and communism that are all intertwined usually in these totalitarian anti-religions. And besides that, I think it can also be said that there are certainly things that governments need to do too. Like some more libertarian types would be averse to taking these sort of actions, but there do need, as far as I can tell anyway, there do need to be put laws in place that do prevent certain like forms of moral degeneracy from occurring in such large amounts. Like societies nowadays, we have social safety nets in order to prevent people from entering inescapable poverty and whatnot and starvation. But it seems to me we also need a moral safety net. We need to actually put policies in place to prevent people from going too far down the path of degeneracy as a collective society. Like, for example, banning pornography. Like that's a great step that we could take towards preventing degeneracy in society. Like banning weed, banning along with other hard drugs. Like, weed's not a hard drug, but like even when it comes to drugs in general, though, like I tend to think that if it's not like alcohol or tobacco, it should be banned. In the case of tobacco and alcohol, preferably, there should be some pretty high taxes put up upon it. Like, it seems to me that like people are focusing on things that are taking their minds off of God. And like, if we do eliminate some of these or if we restrict some of these forms of degeneracy, that will actually help result in a better moral order. It seems to me that the way society is right now, we don't have any moral standards that are keeping things in place. Sort of imagine it like a light bulb. Like it's a light bulb that has nothing around it. It's just on a stand and it's just the light's going in all directions. It's scattering in every single direction. Doesn't matter if it's scattering in a good direction or a bad direction or a neutral direction. It's just scattering everywhere. It seems, but of course we don't want to be so authoritarian that like you just put like the light inside like a cup and have the light just like shine in one single direction. Like that has the potential to be rather destructive. It seems to me what we really need is a sort of, not exactly a disc, but like imagine the light bulb has a sort of enclosure around it that doesn't go too far, but does go far enough that it does give us the light is going to shine in a general direction. Like I think that's ultimately what the goal should be when it comes to putting laws in place to restrict certain behaviors. Like I don't think we should go too far. Like I very much believe in like free speech and having, in gun rights, things of that sort. Like I don't want like people to live in a totally authoritarian society in which people aren't free. But I do think that there are certain restrictions that need to be put in place, and if we don't put them in place, then we're ultimately going to continue to degenerate, and society is going to continue to go into a very dark direction.
So I guess I would respond by saying government having such a heavy hand in society, don't you think that's antithetical to everything that we were founded on? I mean, I know you said that you don't think it should go as far as where government's limiting speech or restricting gun rights, but as far as an individual responsibility, individual choice aspect, don't you think that these moral decisions should be made and even cultivated, I guess, at the community level? Like if, for example, don't you think that it's probably the church's role, the community's role, to prevent too much moral decay?
I think that it is, but I think that they certainly do have a big role to play in that, and if not a primary role. That being said, like if the community isn't doing that, that is an issue. Also, like when it comes to these various laws that I'm proposing that like restrict certain behaviors, like something to keep in mind is that these were actually the norm in America for most of its history. It's only really been since the 1960s that we've been eliminating a lot of these moral laws that prevented a lot of these behaviors, such as obscenity laws, for example. Like these were in place for most of American history. Like, and when it comes to a lot of like things that could potentially be banned, like that weren't originally banned, something to keep in mind is that the American founders lived in 1776. They couldn't conceive of what was going to occur over the course of the next 2.5 centuries. Like they did not conceive of communism and fascism, National Socialism. They didn't conceive of mass internet pornography and things of that sort. Like they couldn't possibly have even foreseen any of these things. So it seems to me that in applying their principles, like if anything, like maybe I am going a little further than they would have, but I feel that for the most part I am in line with what they probably would have done if they actually did see what things were going to appear to be in 2.5 centuries.
Yeah, I will say, and I've said it before on the show, that our founding fathers were leaps and bounds beyond their own time, right? I think that they had such a complex understanding of history, right? I mean, they studied history, they studied historic government, right? And that's how they came to found what America is today. But like you said, I don't think they would have predicted how advanced that we would have become so quickly. I want to go back and talk about wokeism, and you were talking about the difference between hard totalitarianism and soft totalitarianism, and how wokeism is essentially, I'm going to say wokeism is essentially a tool of the left to try to control the rest of the population. So liberals, classic liberals, I don't think that they should be compared to the left today. The left today is a minority of people who are just extremely loud, right? They're the people who want to cancel anybody that says something that they don't agree with, which I think is super dangerous. Talk to me a little bit about how they're shaping society, how they're shaping culture today.
Yeah. So first of all, we should a little bit to that concept that I brought up towards the beginning of like the three degenerates of nationalism, racialism, and communism. Like if we do look at the totalitarian ideologies over the course of last century, like is that they all did have different combinations of these three aspects. Like communism, which is communism, like and it did often have some nationalistic elements in practice. Fascism, it added like heavy amounts of nationalism into that sort of socialistic, communistic aspect, and National Socialism added like this racial, like white supremacist, well, I guess more accurately, Aryan supremacist element into it. In the case of wokeism, though, it's really strange ideology because it's very much, in some ways, it's almost like the inverse of National Socialism, even though it's still totalitarian in its nature. It's this really strange ideology. It like because unlike National Socialism, it's rather than being nationalistic, it's sort of internationalistic in a way. Like rather than white supremacists, like it or and racial supremacists, I should say, it's like sort of like it's also this racialist ideology, but it's not a racial supremacist ideology. So it is, you could say it is a racist ideology, but it's not the same kind of racism that we would have seen in like in the past. It's this very strange inversion of how racism would have originally worked, sort of like going after the dominant, or I should say the most prominent race in society, as opposed to like some minority.
Right.
Like wokeism is an extraordinarily anti-white ideology, as we've seen over the course of the last 2 years. Like it seems to only be increasing as time goes on. Like I remember a while back there was a medical journal that said that whiteness is a disease in need of a permanent cure, which is, like one step away from saying we need a final solution for whiteness. Like it's
or
like,
a genocide.
That's kind of extreme. Yeah, like I mean, potentially, I'm not going to say that's going to happen. I really have no idea whatsoever. Like I really don't. But I really don't know where this ideology is heading. And of course, besides that, there is, of course, the obvious communistic elements and sort of the, it's not as quite as prominent in the economical sense, traditional communism, but in terms of the cultural sense, like there's a lot more of that. Like this is why some people call it cultural Marxism, because it does want to like invert the moral order of society, but also and like destroy culture in a way that was, you could say, that is even more extreme than communism, at least in wokeism's most extreme forms, I'd say. And like all ideologies are certain, like not everyone is like entirely in line with the ideology itself, but there is a clear orthodoxy, and that orthodoxy does seem to be getting more extreme over time.
And I think you can draw a parallel between Mao's four olds and what's happening today within this cultural revolution by the left. So for the listeners who aren't aware, the four olds of Mao were old ideas, old culture, old habits, and old customs. And I think especially during the race riots of 2020, we saw these Marxists within our culture attacking those four very things, right? They were going after our founding fathers, right? So, they're going after old ideas and old culture. They're destroying statues, and they're trying to rewrite our history, right, through the 1619 project.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. Like, I actually did study a lot about Mao's China a while back, and there are certainly a lot of eerie similarities. I will say that. Like, I'm not sure if things will go that far as they did in Mao's China. But it was certainly much more of a hard totalitarian regime than the sort of ideology we see being pushed forward. And certainly economically speaking, that ideology was more extreme than wokeism. And this is actually something interesting that I think a lot of people haven't noted, is that when it comes to wokeism's economics, it's actually much more similar to like the economics of National Socialism and fascism than it is to communism, in the way that under the, like, not necessarily in practice, maybe it will be, but it's hard to tell at this point. like it hasn't actually been put into practice all too much. But when it comes to the range of economic beliefs, like under the National Socialist regime, pretty much everyone's beliefs like could fall between like the equivalent of social democrats and all the way up to like Marxist Leninists in terms of like how they viewed economics. Hitler himself tended to be more on the social democratic side. He wasn't too extreme on economics. Just a side note. Like but yeah, we do see the same exact thing with wokeism, in that we do see the sort of social democratic idea at one end, and then we see at the very far end, we see the sort of Marxist Leninist view in economics. Like there is the same exact range, which does seem to me to be perhaps an indicator that these sort of totalitarian ideologies do not actually, like if they do not actually have a specifically orthodox economic idea, then it is ultimately going to have a very wide range. Like it seems to me that's exactly what we're seeing now, and I think that's one certainly big difference between what we're seeing now and Mao's regime.
So I guess I'd ask you, I pose the question, do you see the tides turning back in the direction of sanity? Right. So I mentioned earlier that the far left has completely hijacked the Democrat Party, right? And they are just pushing this far left ideology. And again, it's a minority of people. It's the squad, right? It's not every Democrat in our government. Do you think that 2022 midterm elections, if in fact the Republicans recapture the House, recapture the majority, do you think the Democrat Party is going to suppress that far left ideology because it's not a winning issue?
So admittedly, when it comes to this sort of issue, you could say that I'm an optimistic pessimist. Like I highly doubt they're going to suppress it. Like and even if they did, it's still going to be an ideology that will continue to try to find ways to spread throughout society. I think that in 2022, during the midterms, I think that we are the right is going to like have a landslide. I think we're going to do very well. I think that in 2024, there's a high chance we're going to do very well. The Biden administration has ultimately, and I'm not speaking for Global Dawn USA, but but when it comes to the Biden administration, it's pretty clear that it's doing a very poor job. Like no one is particularly liking what Biden is doing. Things are not going to go well for him. So in 2024, I would most bet on either Trump or DeSantis becoming the next president. So in the short term, I think we're going to do very well. But when it comes to the medium term and the long term, it's a little different. Like when it comes to the medium term, which I'm going to define as over the course of the next several decades, personally, I'm actually very pessimistic. I don't think that things are going to go too well. Like I really don't want that to be the case. But looking at world trends, I do feel that things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. Like, and I think that includes with the moral degeneration of our civilization. I think in all likelihood, so Friedrich Nietzsche, he one interpretation of what he said was that like in the decades after his death, mankind would try to recreate societies in the image of man rather than the image of God, and that it would ultimately be disastrous. And with like communism and fascism and whatnot, that's exactly what happened. Like, and we saw to a lesser extent here in the West with certain like proto woke ideologies. Like, but like he also said that in the aftermath of that would come an age of nihilism, and I think that is pretty much where we are right now. We are in this very nihilistic, solipsistic age, and like this is sort of a global phenomenon. Like people aren't really passionate about much of anything, and I'm not really sure how to articulate it. But even wokeism itself, something about it is just inherently nihilistic. And solipsistic. I'm not even sure how to properly articulate it, but there's something about it that it is like that. And so I'd say that's what I think that things are going to look like. I think that things are going to get worse. Like I think that you could say this is going to be the century of nihilism, and after that, I think that the next century it's going to be more so just a century of perhaps even greater chaos than we see in this century. like with declining birth rates, for example, like I think it's going to be obvious, but by 2100, like societies around the world are going to be collapsing. It's going to be quite horrible. I think that there is hope that perhaps the century after that, though, like I think that by the time the 23rd century comes around, like I think that we are going to actually see past a lot of these, like, and this is all theoretical, of course. I don't know if this will actually happen, but I think that, like, at least at most by the 23rd century, we will probably see past a lot of these great evils, and we will actually see, like, trying to embrace this nihilism and this utopianism and not like all these like anti-religious ideas and stuff. They're ultimately just useless. Like, I think that will be the time in which most likely the idea of uniting the world under one banner is most likely to occur. Like when we've actually seen past like all this nonsense that we've been embracing over the course of the like this last century. I think that's what's most likely, how things are most likely going to go down. Personally, I'd prefer if things didn't go down that way, of course, which of course is part of the reason why I've made this organization Global Dawn USA, because I don't want to see things go in that direction. Like I'd prefer, at the very least, I'd like to create an island in like a safe haven in the middle of the storm. You know, at the very least, if we can make that, then that'd be great. Like, I don't know if things will even go that well or that badly, but if I had to guess, that would be how things are going to look.
Do you think that banner that we can unite the entire world under, do you think that could be Christianity?
I don't think it could be Christianity alone, personally. I do highly doubt that, because Christianity, as large a religion as it is, it's not like the only religion in the world. Like, this is ultimately what I'm trying to do, is I'm trying to articulate what are the moral values that are universal to the various world religions, and try to create a philosophy from that can encompass everyone from all the various God-given world religions. Like, that is ultimately how I see it. Like, I don't really think that, like, as great as Christianity is, and it is truly a great religion, I do doubt that it alone could unite the world. Like, we all need to work together, and all need to work together towards the transcendent pursuit of God, and towards uniting his various peoples in order to actually like create this global moral order and uniting the nations under a single banner.
So, Cade, to close out the show, what we like to do is we like to give our guests the opportunity to speak directly to our listeners and to our followers. If you had one thing to impress upon them, whether it be a message of hope or whatever you want it to be, what would you say to them?
I would say embrace God and embrace God alone. Like, he is ultimately like the greatest of the greats, the Almighty, the just, the merciful, the beneficent. And he will ultimately guide you to the best life possible. In the Gospels, it says that seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. All these things implying the various needs and wants you can have in life. Basically meaning that if you do pursue this utmost aim of God, you, like, everything else in your life will be oriented properly for you, and everything will also be oriented towards that transcendent goal of God. So seek him out, try to understand him, try doing your very best in this regard, try to live a virtuous life. Don't lose hope. Try to, everything may look very bad nowadays, but ultimately I think that God has such great plans for us that you can't even imagine it. The future has much to hold, and I think that God will guide us in a fantastic direction going forward.
Amen. If our followers want to find you, where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, so when it comes to the organization itself, the exact handle on Instagram is at Global Dawn USA, no spaces, no capitals, nothing of that sort. And then there's also my personal Instagram, which is Cade Murphy Official. Cade spelled CADEMURPHY for Murphy, and then just official. No spaces there either. That's where you can find me on Instagram. I also have some pages on Facebook and Twitter as well. Real Cade Murphy is my handle there if you want to follow me there.
All right, excellent. Cade Murphy, thank you so much for joining the show.
Thank you, my pleasure.